I can see it now. So today we're going to talk about leveraging your strengths and what that means in leadership. When you ask people to rattle off their weaknesses, without a shadow of a doubt, they are able to list 10 of their weaknesses, right? It's easy for us. And from my experience as a leadership coach, what I found is when you actually ask people to list off their strengths, for many, there's hesitation, uncertainty, and sometimes it's met with a question, right? It's like, I think maybe I'm a good listener. So it kind of begs the question, why are we so confident talking about our weaknesses and then so uncertain when it comes to our strengths? It is because we are just ingrained to focus on the negative, right? And I'm going to talk a lot about that today. But I really want to shift the narrative, right? Leaders who focus on their strengths, which really is our comfort zone, tend to be happier, they're more effective, they're more engaged, and they develop more engaged teams, ultimately benefiting the bottom line, right? According to Gallup research, they're 6 times more engaged at work, and this translates over into their personal lives as well, right? So the research shows that leveraging your strengths through leadership really has profound benefits and profound results. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. If you want to go to the next slide, Jill. So as you all know, you're here today. We are Amala Vida. We are a coaching organization, and we specialize in career, leadership, life, and health coaching. And what I love about this amazing organization that I get to be a part of is truly the meaning of our name is to love your life. And that's what we help our clients do through, really transformational coaching. If you want to go to the next slide, this is me. I probably should have introduced myself right off the bat. I'm Cait. I'm a leadership and life coach with Amala Vida. I have a background in predominantly leadership development, but I've also made a number of career pivots so far in my career. I am certified as an executive coach, but I also love assessments. So I use a lot of definitely strengths-based leadership type assessments in my coaching. Yeah, I love what I do. I love being here, and I'm excited to share more of this with you today. So here's kind of an overview. Obviously, you all registered for this event, so I think you know what to expect. I really want this to be interactive. I'm going to be talking a lot, and also the chat is great, and I'm going to have some opportunity for you all to leverage that and speak out today. So just know that that's coming. We're going to be discussing kind of an overview first of what strengths are. I'm going to talk about how to leverage your strengths. We're going to talk about what strengths-based leadership is and why it matters, and then how we can all kind of round it out to maximize teams. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the first thing I want all of you to do, and if you have something to write with in front of you, that is also really great. But I want you to think about how you would complete this sentence. So the best thing about me is blank. Think about the things that you like most about yourself. I will say for some of us, based on my introduction, right, some of this is really hard for people. For some it's easy. But I really encourage you to be, a little bold here, a little vulnerable, and share. So for me, I've done this a number of times. It evolves, but what I always like to share as a coach, and just who I am in the world, is I'm Cait, and the best thing about me is that I'm truly empathetic, and I motivate people to be the best versions of themselves. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you? So please, if you feel compelled, I'd love you to put that in the chat. And or if you feel very bold, come off mute and share with us all. Okay, I'm looking at the chat. Rosie, the best thing about me is my work ethic. I love that. Velita, the best thing about me is that I'm a jack of all trades. Oh my goodness. I'd love that talent. Sarah's thoughtful. Katie always wants to learn new things. Yes, curiosity. Oh my gosh. Catherine, love to help others. And Catherine, I would be willing to bet that you're very good at it too. Ami, the best thing about me is that I value relationships, I value learning, and I'm very reliable. Yes, I love that. Hannah is resilient. Oh my gosh, like that I feel like should be another training for another day. Resiliency and leadership. Hope it's your adaptability. Sarah, emotional intelligence. I love that. You should go check out our recording. I did one on emotional intelligence a couple of weeks ago. Mary, sense of humor and integrity. Oh, I love that combination. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. I love getting the chat and what a diverse group we have here. We're going to come back to this. So I want you to continue to feel like sharing in there, but hopefully going to give you some tools to kind of warm up to this a little bit more. So the first thing is, what are our strengths? Strengths can be thought of in kind of three areas. So our talents, which is what we're born with, right? Like those are our innate gifts that we have to offer the world. We're all born with these things. Skills, right? And those are effective practices really that we've learned. So I would say for if you're looking at kind of like, for me personally, coaching would be a skill that I have learned. And then the last piece is knowledge, right? This is facts, theories, and data that you've learned, right? And kind of pulling all of that together, that's what makes our strengths. There is a fantastic book that I've kind of cited at the bottom by Marcus Buckingham, and it's called Go Put Your Strengths to Work, 6 Powerful Steps to Achieve Outstanding Performance. And what he talks about is this idea of, he calls it like signs, right? So it's success, instinct, growth, and needs. So success meaning, a strength is something that you feel successful and confident in, right? You excel in the activity. You're oftentimes rewarded and recognized for it. And then instinctually, right? Like you find yourself drawn to the activity. You can't help but want to do it. And then the growth piece is really like that you find yourself learning fastest and you're most creative about it. You almost like, you become in that state of flow with it, right? You're so engrossed in it that you almost can't stop, right? So have any of you had a time where maybe you're learning about something and it's just so intriguing to you that you can't stop reading? Maybe it was a book or a podcast that you were listening to, and you just couldn't stop learning about that activity. Oftentimes you hear that in stories of entrepreneurs, right? Like they were just so engrossed in the work. They were so fascinated by fixing that problem that it didn't feel like work to them. And then the last part is need, right? It almost becomes addictive in a way. You're so satisfied that you can't wait to do it again. I've kind of 6 components over there that really reiterate everything that I was said. But I mean, bottom line here is that it's something that comes naturally to us. We feel energized by it. We're naturally kind of good at it. And we're recognized for it. Oftentimes our strengths, and what I found with clients is they say, I didn't even know that that was a strength, right? Because it just comes so easily that we're like, wait, everyone can do that, right? So think a little bit about that. So we're gonna move forward here. So divergent thinking, you can raise your hand or you can just say yes or no in the chat. Who has heard of this concept? It's something that I think is really relevant to bring up as we talk about this exercise and this idea of leveraging and identifying our strengths. Divergent thinking is one of those characteristics, and it's a defining quality of highly creative people. It is defined as a thought process or method used to generate creative ideas by exploring many possible solutions. So many of you may have probably heard of the yes and game, right? Really, I mean, it's about possibilities. It's about creativity. And according to research that I have read, and a number of studies say that 90% of kindergartners actually rank genius in divergent thinking. And then within 5 years, it falls to 50%. And there's then a slow, steady decrease after that. So why is it that children rank so high in divergent thinking, but then as adults, we tend to lose this skill? I think a big part of that, and in my experience, I think it has to do with play, right? So I would encourage all of you to really think about your strengths and identifying them through a lens of play, right? Think of a child, a playful child. Think of that inner kindergartner, right? Like we were all at that stage in our lives, but we don't oftentimes connect with that person, right? So really want to encourage that lens. I have a picture of Albert Einstein here because he is, a great example of him using divergent thinking reportedly when he was 2 years old and his baby sister came into the world. He asked, but where are her wheels? He wanted to play with her, and that is just like a perfect example of divergent thinking at play and the kind of lens that I'm encouraging you all to think about this topic through. So if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk about identifying your strengths now. So Jill, if you don't mind going forward. Perfect. So identifying your strengths, this is really about leveraging your full potential, right? So if you have that notebook in front of you, I really encourage you to get out and start maybe just brainstorming using some of those divergent thinking skills to think about answers to some of these questions. So what are you good at, right? Think about all of the things. I would say list absolutely everything out, even the big, the small, the strange, the subtle. It can be messy, right? Just like all of the things that you're good at. And then I want you to think about, another thing that you can think about is, what do people generally come to help? It's generally come to you for help, right? Again, it could be anything big, small. What is that thing? Another way to think about this could be, what do you often get thanked for? What are you acknowledged for? What are you complimented on? Again, could be absolutely anything. And then my favorite question is, what comes really easy and natural to you? Even though others may struggle with that. And I know that that's hard to think about. But just, again, try to tap into that inner child, right? Like what really would you be spending your days doing, right? That comes really easy and natural. Another way to think this is to kind of put yourself in situations, right? So maybe think about a situation where you felt valued, right? Maybe you made an important contribution to a person or a team. How was this? What value did you add? And then, I love this question too. It's hard for us to see our strengths in ourselves, but if you were to put yourself in the shoes of, the people that love you the most, and also your colleagues and your friends, what do you think that they would say about you? And obviously this one slide could be a workshop for, several hours, and we could break out and talk about this. You have this as a resource. I want all of you to really reflect on this. And as you do that, as you kind of create this big mind map, right? Look for common themes and the frequency in which you kind of see similar answers, right? That is where the real power lies in identifying your strengths. And really just honestly, from a tactical standpoint, this can be a really good starting point, and an excellent resource for exploring and understanding what your value is and how you can really extend your value and maximize your potential in all of the different communities that you serve. Okay, so strategies to assess and leverage your strengths. So now that you've kind of thought about how do you identify your strengths, I want to talk about how we can put this into action. So the first thing is working with an ALV coach. I know that may sound a little funny coming from me, but I genuinely mean it. We have Coach Jen on the phone. We also have obviously Coach Jill. And I don't know if there's any of our other coaches, but I would be willing to bet that all of us look at this when coaching our clients. This is generally for most a really like such a great baseline and such a great starting point to work with our clients and really maximize their potential. There's a lot of information that I'm sharing with you here. I'm going to also talk about some other strategies, but ultimately there's only so much that we can do on our own. But when we have that coach to really hold up the mirror and reflect back a lot of those insights and challenge you, that's where the magic and the power lies. So I'd encourage you all to sign up working with an ALV coach. The second piece is really tactical. This Strengthsfinder 2.0 is one of my favorite books. We are not affiliated with Gallup, but I love, love, love this book. I know I have some clients on the phone today that we have done extensive work around the Gallup Strengthsfinder. I think the book itself is maybe $20 and then you get a code with it. It's a 45-minute assessment. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the research in a few more slides. But that's a really great starting point if identifying your strengths through some of the reflection that I gave you is feeling a little challenging maybe for you to come up with those ideas. The next thing I really love to encourage is a reflected best self exercise. Again, this is something that Amala Vida leverages, but it's something that you can also do on your own. And what that looks like is asking 10 people who know you the best. And I would encourage, a mix of mentors, managers, if you manage people, maybe some of your direct reports, family members, maybe people who have reported to you in the past, and really have them just write down or share with you 3 different times where they've seen you at your best. And then getting that feedback can be really great in getting, again, kind of drawing out those themes, figuring out what those themes, what strengths those themes suggest, right? And then from there, what you can do is really create a self-portrait outlining, how you're perceived at your best, right? And then ultimately go put your strengths to work from there. Another thing that I don't have on here too is also leveraging a 360 assessment. If any of you have seen that, that is, kind of goes into my next point is about recognizing your weaknesses. 360s will give you opportunities and strengths. I put that on there because I actually think that it's okay to recognize our weaknesses and actually give ourselves permission to know that we don't have to be perfect. And we're not all good at everything, right? So, that is part of the strategy here. I mentioned that book earlier, Go Put Your Strengths to Work. I definitely recommend that. I definitely recommend Strengthsfinder 2.0. Words of affirmation, right? Like that can be a very powerful tool. Our brain has this amazing ability. I don't know if any of you have heard of neuroplasticity, but we're actually able to rewire our brain with repetition. And so what affirmation does is it encourages the brain to see those messages as truth, right? So an example of an affirmation may be, I am a leader, I am kind, and literally saying that out loud and repeating that or writing it down. It helps especially when you get caught up in your weaknesses. I'm a big advocate of affirmation. I'm also, I think that there is a blind spot there that I would be doing you all a disservice if I didn't say. It's okay to share affirmations, but we also need to take action on them. So it's a great exercise, but also know that it doesn't do us very good to just sit with our thoughts and tell ourselves how good we are. Sure, that's great, but we also have to take action on there. Another strategy you may consider is creating a personal mission statement that includes applying your strengths and maybe journaling on that statement every morning. If your strength, for example, is leadership, a mission statement might sound like to make a difference in the lives of the people that I lead every day, right? Reminding yourself of that mission statement keeps you focused. And then creating an action plan. This is something that I would say a coach can you can really benefit from coaching here. Now that we have all of this awareness, right? Like, what are we going to do with it? Could that look like further developing yourself through education? Could it look like, exploring pivoting your career because your strengths aren't aligning to the work that you're doing? Could it look like, maybe it's not a career move, but maybe there's something that you're actually really passionate about that's been laying dormant in you? Are there, community service or different organizations that you could get involved in that would really help feed that talent? So creating an action plan, I think, is really important here. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so now that I've given you all some really good content, and I know I'm going quickly, any new insights here, right? Are there things that have come up? Are there things that are innate to you that maybe weren't there before as you think about this through the lens of your inner child? And I'll check out the chat and see what's happening. Looks like we got a few more since I got that. Listening and being interested to people. I'm a nerd and a servant. Oh, I love that combination. And my integrity and enjoying work. Yes. Yes, all of these are so good. And also feel free, like, if it's not any new insights, if you have questions, please chime in. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds here, moments. Right, I know it's a lot to digest and unpack, but as you know, you'll have the recordings. So I really encourage all of you to revisit this, to revisit those kind of reflection questions. I think that it can be a really great exercise for you. Okay. So raise of hands, maybe a yes in the chat. Who has heard this statement or this mantra before? You can be anything you want to be as long as you try hard enough. How many of you were told this growing up, right? Probably many of us. Overcoming deficits is an essential fabric of the culture in the US. Our lives are filled with stories of the underdog. We celebrate the underdog who's, beat the 1 in a million chance. I'm not discounting those stories by any means. But what it does when we celebrate that is it leads us to celebrate those who maybe lack a natural ability, more than we actually recognize people who capitalize on their innate talents, right? And so of this, the result is that we see those stories as kind of the epitome of, I hate this word, but like the American dream, right? And unfortunately, this is kind of the path of most resistance. And I'll tell you a personal story here. And it's funny because my dad's on the phone today. Hi, Dad. And I think that you'll connect with this or you'll remember. My family are from Australia. I obviously don't have an accent anymore. I moved when I was 10, so I've lived most of my life in the US. And like most 10-year-olds, soccer was a big thing. And when I came here, it was kind of like, I wanted to make friends. A few of my friends from school were on the soccer team. And so I did what everyone did and I signed up for soccer. I am not naturally athletic. I wish that I had that. I'm just not coordinated in that way. You throw a ball in there and I don't know what to do. I have other talents. I'm much more creative. I'm much more of a musician. Like all of those things were much more natural to me. But I was determined to become a good soccer player. And so, mom and dad put me through camps. I joined a team. Side note, our mascot was the Ferrets, which is just the silliest mascot name ever. But I was much more interested in the snacks after soccer practice and didn't become a better soccer player over time. And, this isn't something that we outgrow, right? In the workplace, most times in organizational hierarchies, we see people forced into different roles that don't play to their talents, right? And for some people, they aren't talented managers because they don't have an innate talent of developing others, right? Obviously, that's not the only role, but it just consistently like persists throughout our society. In education, right? A poll according to Gallup said that 77% of Americans' parents say that a student's lowest grades deserves the most attention, right? And I'm not saying that there isn't some truth there, but the reality is, like, as we kind of go throughout our lives, if you aren't naturally empathetic, you're probably not going to do well in customer service, right? You may not make a great coach. Conversely, like if you're not great with numbers, then you're probably not going to make a great accountant, right? So, I think it's just an important thing to highlight, right? And I know that these examples are quite simplistic, even my soccer example. But truly, and I'm going to talk about this when we talk about strengths-based leadership, when we're able to put our energy into developing our natural talents, extraordinary room for growth exists. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about this. So how many of you have heard of strengths-based leadership? Just raise of hands. You can do the little hand or say a yes or no. Strengths-based leadership is defined as the ability to identify and make the best use of your own and your team members' strengths, okay? So I love to use this little math equation, if you will. Strengths-based leadership is all about our talents, right? Identifying what that talent is, and then investing in the talent, and that's how it becomes a strength, right? For a lot of us, these talents may lie dormant and we can recognize them, right? But if we're not actually investing in them, we don't actually maximize our full potential. Strengths-based leadership was something that was introduced to me, fortunately, early in my career. I had spent around the first 3 years of my career actually working in procurement and finance, and I just couldn't figure out why something wasn't right there. I'd majored in finance and economics. It had, I like numbers and I like data, but it just, something wasn't being fed, right? And what I realized as I kind of went through that experience is that what I loved most about business was the people and how do I develop people and the mentoring of interns that I was doing and leading different development, presentations like the one that I'm doing now, right? And so I made a transition into HR, people operations, and that's when it really clicked for me, right? Like not only was this topic being introduced to me, but I realized why the work that I was doing was coming so naturally. It's because I could leverage my strengths of connecting with people. I could leverage my innate talents of maximizing the team around me, right? Like, and actually developing others. And so it all kind of came full circle for me personally at that point. Then a little bit of history here, right? So I keep mentioning the StrengthsFinder book, but Donald Clifton, he was kind of the late father of strengths psychology. And in conjunction with Gallup, they really started this conversation about what was right with people. And he was sick of this world that we were living in, like the world that I was telling you about, where it really revolved around fixing people's weaknesses, right? And so what they did is through, 40 years of research, I think it was, they interviewed something like 10 million people, right? And what they found is that there were 34 common talent themes that were recurring within all of the people that they studied. And that's what became ultimately the StrengthsFinder assessment. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, I mean, just fascinating stuff, right? That there's actually these consistent themes that show up in people, and what happens when we unlock that potential. So if you want to move forward. So at work, through their research, right, Gallup, I think they had like a decade study where they interviewed 10 million people on the topic of employee engagement. And my question that I want to pose to you is, what percentage of people do you believe strongly agreed with this statement? So you can throw out any number. Strongly agreed of the 10 million they interviewed. Okay, so 10%, yeah, so 5 million would be 50%, 30%, 50%, 5%, Chris. Yeah, I mean, 90% strongly agreed. Sarah, that is very ambitious. 0%. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll give you the answer. It was 33%. So what that tells us, right, is that 1 in 3 of this group were able to they're given the opportunity to do their best every single day. But what's even more staggering about this study is that those who don't get to focus on what they do best, right, their strengths, the costs are actually staggering. Those who strongly disagreed with this statement, there was not one person that was emotionally engaged on the job. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll give you some more research. So what's great, though, is that those who do have the opportunity to focus on their strengths are 6 times more, they're related, they say that they're 6 times more engaged at work. And this translates over into our personal life, right? So I'll keep talking about this, but if we talk about, I guess, employee engagement, right? Like what this data shows us is that the epidemic of disengagement, it's very clear, right? That if leaders and organizations are able to focus on people's strengths, the power that exists when we can do that, right? So I'm going to talk about how that translates if you want to go to the next slide. So maximizing teams, right? A strengths-based approach can benefit your leadership and also your team's performance in several ways. The first is delegation. Jen, I think I'm going to call you out here, but I think that you and me, probably with all of our leadership clients, delegation seems to be something that comes up a lot, right? Delegation it's a sign of strength, quite frankly. It enables you to concentrate on what you do your best. If you're able to understand as a leader what your team's strengths are, then you're able to effectively delegate those tasks to the team. And it really promotes, I would say, the shared responsibility, which can stimulate creativity and innovation. It also creates mastery and purpose within the team. As a leader, when we're able to show our team members that we recognize strengths, right? Obviously, you've seen the data. but also it shows trust, right? It demonstrates that we as leaders trust the abilities of the people on our team. As a result, then they feel more confident to express their own ideas. They feel more motivated. It promotes their self-worth, right? Which then in turn, increases productivity. It increases engagement, which we know that engagement and productivity tie to output. I think there was a study that I had here from the Hay Group, which is a global management consultancy, that showed that engaged workers actually 43% more productive, right? So it adds to the bottom line if you're working for a for-profit organization. And, Gallup also through their research showed that it can increase job satisfaction, right? Which makes sense, right? If we're able to work on what we're good at naturally, like we're going to be happier coming to work. And another piece of data there is that, when managers actually focus, that only 1% of employees become disengaged if their managers focus on their strengths, while 40% become disengaged if their key skills are ignored, right? So the stakes are very low here if we're able to mostly focus on strengths. And then the last piece that I think is just very interesting, and I want to drive home here, a strengths-based approach encourages diversity in our hiring, right? Because we are not hiring based on individual abilities and aptitudes, and not just because our skills and experience, not just because the candidate's skills and experience mirror ours. And ultimately, it can lead to greater team cohesion. And it can also just produce a more diverse team with a wider range of skill sets, attitudes, and cultural values. So obviously, there's a ton of benefit here, right? And the answer is pretty simple. And so I'd love you all to just consider this, whether you are leading a team, and even if you are not leading a direct team, how can you think about developing others within your team, kind of using this approach? So just in closing here, and we'll have lots of time for questions, and I see that there's a lot of stuff in the chat there. I really want to rewrite that mantra that sorry everyone, you can't be anything you want to be, but you can be a whole lot more of who you already are. Study your strengths, right? Study your strengths, study the strengths of others. You will increase your self-awareness, your social awareness, and ultimately your leadership. I encourage you all to seek opportunities that align to your strengths as you get to know them and you get more comfortable talking about them. The data's there. My personal experience, I can tell you it. My personal anecdotes from clients, I can tell you that this works. So with that, I have a couple of more things to add, but they're more kind of like just logistics things. So I want to see what is happening in the chat. Okay, so Sarah says, how do we talk about our weaknesses with employers or future employers when they ask about them? Yeah, that's such a great question. So, I am not, I guess I'm not, what am I trying to say? I am aware that this question comes up a lot in interviews. Something that I didn't talk about today is you've probably heard the saying, our strengths are also our weaknesses. And when our strengths are, something that I do work on with my clients is we have kind of like the motivators of our strengths that feeds our strengths. And then we have the shadows. So something you might consider, Sarah, is when you're asked to talk about your weaknesses, maybe think about your strengths and when they're overextended. I'll give you an example. So one of my strengths, according to, my own personal experience, just kind of unpacking it. And I shared it with you all. And also according to the StrengthsFinder assessment is empathy. And empathy obviously is a remarkable talent that I have. I use that talent every single day in working with my clients. It is this ability that I can sort of step into a room, be in conversation, and I can feel the emotion of others before it even comes up. Jill, I know we had an experience the other day where I did just that, and you were like, how did you do that, right? The downside of empathy and when it becomes a weakness is when I start to carry the weight of other people, right? And it actually becomes really unhealthy. And I sort of take their problems on, right? So maybe start to think about what are your strengths and what are kind of like, what's kind of the shadow with that strength? That might be a really great way to kind of talk about that. And coaches on the phone, if you have any other insight on that question, I think it's really, really valuable. And feel free to chime in. Okay. There were some of the answers for that. Okay. So Katie goes, delegation lets me focus on the areas where I'm most needed. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, it definitely does. So feel free to continue to leverage the chat. I'm going to talk through just a couple of logistics here. If you have questions too, like please come off mute or leverage the chat that way. I'd love to keep this dialogue going. That's why we have a few more minutes here today. So if you want to go to the next slide. So work with us, right? Like, what does this look like? Obviously we're a coaching company, so we work with clients individually, but we also do workshops just like this workshop and on other various topics. So if you would kindly, any of you that think that your organization would benefit from a workshop on a topic like this, or maybe something else that could help develop your team, please drop us a yes in the chat. That's really helpful information for us to have. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll give you some examples. So these are a variety of options that we can do. We've done topics on emotional intelligence, psychological safety, building trust, delegation, right? I mean, that came up today. All of these things, I would say that this list is not, it's not limited to just this list. In addition to, workshopping, please drop us a yes too if you feel like you could benefit from having a leadership coach or someone at your organization. We'd love to hear from you. And then the last thing I just want to kind of remind you of is that we have events all of the time. If you want to go to the next slide, register for some of our upcoming events. We have Coach Jen on the 23rd doing an event on what's your leadership style. We have a great leadership assessment through Amalavita that Jen actually created that I encourage you all to go out and take. Jill is also on the phone and she's doing an amazing event on the 30th around imposter syndrome, which is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. So check out our events, share them with your network. We'd love to get connected. Rosie, that's great. You're registered for both. So happy to hear. And then I guess just as we kind of close, any other questions? Let's see. Sarah, thank you. Registered for both. Yeah. So any thoughts as we kind of close down here a few minutes earlier, or Jen, if you're still on the line, any maybe additional inputs? I know you do a lot of work with strengths, so that might be helpful too. All right, Jill, any closing thoughts maybe from you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Cait. That was awesome. I loved following along. Yeah, I think it's so important. I just really, that last part of just really honing in on and recognizing what you really are good at and remembering that you don't have to be good at everything. And something that I'm learning myself, that I'm going through myself, is really just kind of accepting that it's okay that you don't have to do everything. And it's so much more fun and enjoyable and productive when you really just capitalize on what you are good at, because that's what you want to, we keep learning. We keep wanting to learn. We keep wanting to grow that skill because we enjoy that. And as a self-confidence coach, that's something that I always talk about is, we build that confidence from doing things that we enjoy and doing things that we are good at, because we keep doing it and we keep building that. So I just love all of these simple reminders. Of course, there's a lot more complexity that goes into that, of course, when applied to leadership coaching. But I feel like there's so much of that is extracted just for life and every day. So thank you for all of that. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks,
Any
Harry.
other
And thanks, Harry.
Yes. Thanks, Dad. And I see a number of my clients on the phone too. So thank you. Thank you for commenting. And yes, please, do let us know. I mean, really, we can do workshops if you're interested. If you aren't a client right now, we would love to do, we do a free consult with you. So you can kind of see if we're for you as well. So encourage you to leverage that as well.
Yeah. Awesome. And as Cait might have already mentioned, lots of awesome stuff being discussed today. And, once things settle, please let us know if you have any questions. When we send that recap out, you can just reply right to that email and it'll come to us. So if anything else comes up, or if anything kind of starts surfacing around those workshops or any of that coaching, definitely let us know.
Yeah.
Oh, Sarah. I was just going to say, I recognize Sarah's name, Sarah Roberts. Welcome to Amlavita. Officially welcome. Oh, there you are. Yay. Thank you for.
I was mostly off video because I had to eat my lunch during the workshop. So.
Welcome, Sarah.
Welcome. It's so nice to see our clients' actual faces, because there's so much emailing and so much email going on. So thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. This was really great. Thank you.
Good.
You have a very beautiful background.
I was just going to say, I love that background. Look at all those books. Oh,
I can send it to you. It's like a JPEG.
Oh,
love
that's
it.
Not your home.
I wonder
You've had us fooled. Well, welcome,
I love
Sarah.
it.
And all of the clients on the phone, we have a great referral program too. If you have other people in your network who you think would benefit from coaching, they'll get a free session and you'll get a free session. So that might be something to think about too.
Yeah, get curious. All right.
All right.
Well,
everyone.
I was just going to say, if there aren't any other questions right now, we can give you back a few minutes. And then, if anything else comes up, definitely reach out. But thank you, Cait, so much for this. I know that this is sometimes can be uncomfortable topic, when we talk about, hey, what are you good at? We don't get asked that question very often. So it's so essential in any sort of personal development and especially leadership development. So thank you for these gentle, but very, very good reminders for all of this. So thank you so much. And thank you all so much for joining today.
Yes. Thank you all.
All right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.